Good morning, everyone. I am Reverend Wendy Silvers, and you have arrived at the Awakened Mother podcast. These are weekly dialogues with leading edge spiritual teachers, visionaries, professionals, moms on the street, moms on the ground. These dialogues are people that are committed to the upliftment, to the empowerment, and to helping mothers stand in their strength, and always and ultimately in service to the children as well. So thank you for being here with us today. I am so thrilled and delighted to share with you a wonderful woman whose acquaintance I've just met, and I think she is just wonderful. And she's an author and a life coach and a transformational teacher. Her name is Ora Nadrich, and I'm going to share a little bit about her with you. Ora Nadrich is a pioneering mindfulness expert, international keynote speaker and coach, and the founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking. Oprah Winfrey's confidant and New York Times bestselling author, Marianne Williamson, has said, "When she speaks, I listen. When she writes, I read it. And when she gives advice, I heed it." Ora is a sought-after expert in the fields of mindfulness, transformational thinking, and self-discovery. Ora created and popularized her highly effective Says Who method, which allows her clients to ask simple questions that result in profound personal and professional transformation. Ora is the author of Says Who, How One Simple Question Can Change the Way You Think Forever, and Live True, a mindfulness guide to authenticity. Ora was named one of the 100 best mindfulness books of all time by Book Authority, which is the world's leading site for book recommendations by thought leaders. And recently was chosen as one of the top 5 books on authenticity and positive psychology. And I'm speaking about Live True, a mindfulness guide to authenticity. Her work has also been featured in Thrive Global, Fast Company, NBC News, Women's Health Magazine, Reader's Digest, Psychology Today, Yahoo, Health, Success Magazine, and many others. She is a frequent Huffington Post contributor and one of their leading global mindfulness experts. Ora was just on KTLA News as a mindfulness expert giving advice on how to reduce stress in your life. And so you can see why I'm a little stumbling over my words, because she is such a beautiful, impressive, heart-centered, mindful, gracious woman, and the author of her brand new book, which we're going to talk about, Mindfulness and Mysticism. So please help me welcome to the stage Ora Nadrich. I'm so, so glad that you are here.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting for us to be able to have this conversation today.
Absolutely. I read your book. I have to tell you, I have highlighted so many passages because you write with a depth and a simplicity and such meaning from the very first, just the introduction. And when you wrote about being a little girl dancing in your living room, I could see you. I could see you doing that when you were talking about the freedom to just be present. So my first question to you, for everyone who is listening, is what do you describe or define mindfulness as?
Do you know, mindfulness has so much in-depth meaning, and I say it's a vast journey to embark on. But when you describe it, or at least the way I describe it, it sounds rather simple, and it really is. It's the practice of it that requires more of us. And mindfulness is really the practice of being present. It's about being in the present moment with total awareness. Sounds easy, but not so easy to do, right? We could say, oh, let me be present in the moment, but not so easy to do because we spend most time in the past and other time in the future, and we have the hardest time staying in the present.
Very true. Very true. So many times, I'm gonna move into mysticism in a bit, but I want to just riff with you a little bit about how did your journey lead you to mindfulness?
You know, it's interesting because when I'm asked that question, especially more recently, I immediately go back to my childhood. And I think that I was most happy when I was in the present moment, as most children are. You know, all you have to do is observe children at play and they're extremely present, do you know? So I was a child, I loved to be outdoors. I was a tree climber. And one of my favorite things to do was to lie, you know, in this open field of grass and look up at the sky and watch the clouds move across the sky, which is such a description that's used in meditation today, that our thoughts are like clouds that move across the sky. They never stay in the same place twice, or what I like to say, we hold on to our thoughts don't hold on to us. So I consider myself as being, you know, even though I was a very happy, bubbly child, I was also contemplative, you know, and I love to be in the moment, as I said. So my journey really in the world of mindfulness happened at a time when I was really seeking. I was on a very deep psychospiritual journey that started many, many years ago, which was really inspired by my sister, one of my oldest sisters, who had a mental breakdown when I was 15 years old. And I went on this path of, I was an actress for 10 years. And when I was an actress, I learned how to meditate. I did transcendental meditation. So I was introduced to meditation early, which really helped me be able to cope with the demands of a profession that was very demanding. But my sister's illness really circled back to me while I was on that path, because it changed my life so profoundly. And, you know, I really wanted to understand the workings of the mind. I needed to understand how she could seemingly be fine one day and then she was never the same again. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia and manic depression. And that became her journey for her entire life until she passed away a few years ago. So I knew that there was work that I wanted to do around the psyche and the soul. And I was such a seeker myself that even while I was acting, I was seeking. And when she was really towards the end of her life is when I wrote my first book, Says Who. And I wanted to devote myself. I had stopped acting. I was also a screenwriter. I had stopped acting and went into the wellness field. And the wellness field opened up an entire world for me in the area of wellness and healing modalities. And one of them was mindfulness. And when I came upon mindfulness as a former transcendental meditator, I really embraced mindfulness meditation because I wanted to learn different modalities of meditation. So I got into the mindfulness field. I became a certified mindfulness meditation teacher. And once I learned about mindfulness, the journey just opened up vastly for me. And that was the beginning of really going into the mindfulness milieu, if you will.
That's wonderful. I mean, what a circuitous journey back to your natural essence.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And having, I mean, being in the acting world and pursuing acting, there is a lot of being in the present, because you've got to react when you're in a scene with somebody, when you're doing something, taking an action, it's got to be very intentional. You've got to spend a lot of time crafting those moments. So it's like paving the way.
Right, exactly. You're right, because it does require you to be so present that you can really come from a place, and you can really see it when an actor is really at the peak of their performance, that they're an open channel, you know, and all of this creativity is moving through them. They're a vessel. But in order to do that, you have to be very present. So it really did. I think there were a lot of sort of strengthening of the way in which I could understand what it means to be present really was formed during that time. And I consider acting was a great vehicle for me to learn a lot of things, for sure.
I can only imagine, especially if you were a screenwriter as well. You got a real bird's eye. I was a press agent. I was a publicist in the entertainment industry for quite a long time. So I worked on a lot of strategies and a lot of campaigns and films and celebrities, and yeah,
So
it's
you know that world, yes.
yeah, and there's so much of it that's wonderful. The whole experience of creativity, which you speak to in your book, of being in that moment of creation and creating something,
Yeah.
is and watching it manifest, be made manifest, is
Yes.
exquisite.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
exquisite. And I really loved how you spoke about how you went to the therapist, and because you were experiencing so much euphoria, and you said it feels like you're, on heroin or something. And I can only imagine what the counselor's reaction was, especially because we're very blessed that we live in a culture now where meditation and mindfulness is part of our vernacular. But I know I mean, I've been on a spiritual path since I'm 8, and that sense of being on, outside, not sure where I belong. I mean, did you have that feeling when you said that to the therapist? Did they?
I did. I mean, again, you start to really connect the dots of the life journey, and you start to think back to, when did I start to have these feelings and these sensations, and when did my intuition speak to me in the ways in which it did? So for me, I love to look back to those sort of very pivotal moments, and it's like the beads on a necklace that you start
Yeah.
to really, kind of thread them together. And when I went to a therapist, I realized I was really experiencing bouts of euphoria way before I went to the therapist. I remember those experiences as even a child, where I felt this, of course, I couldn't describe it as such. I wouldn't be able to say, oh, I'm feeling so euphoric. That's not something that I said to my parents, but I do believe that those feelings, and when I ask people, think back to a time, especially when I want to describe the mystical experience, and I really want to demystify mysticism in the 21st century, because there are a lot of people that don't really know what that looks like, So one of the things that I do is I say, think back to a time when you felt something really, maybe it was even hard to put into words, or to define, that something that took you over. It was a feeling, it was a sensation. And for me, it was a feeling of euphoria. So when I finally went to the therapist to explain it, because what I was feeling, but I wanted to have an explanation given back to me as to what it was, um, they really didn't explain it to me in a way that I was able to find out for myself, which I talk about a lot in the book, about what it means to have the numinous experience, and what is the oceanic feeling. What are these feelings that have been described in philosophy and in spirituality and even in religious context, to explain what it is that we feel, and that so many people have had those experiences, and maybe because I'm proposing that question, they can look back and go, oh, I remember at such and such a time. I never really knew what that was, but that's clearly what it was, but I never gave it a name. So I didn't really get the answers. To answer your question, I didn't get the answers with that particular therapist. I continued on the psychospiritual journey, and fortunately for me, it took me into Jungian analysis, the work of Carl Jung, which really is what just opened up my world psychologically, so it gave me more answers as to what those feeling states are about.
Beautiful. I love Carl Jung. I was watching something the other evening with a Jungian analyst, and he spoke to my heart, and he also was so articulate about the shadow, which so many people just they don't want to look at that, like, oh no, that's, so that's fine. And it makes sense reading, as I was reading your book, it makes sense because the way that you paint words, there's an imagery to the way that you write. So I'm reading it and I have this image. And when you spoke about mysticism, and you quoted Jane Goodall, and was it Unger?
Evelyn Underhill,
Underhill.
who was a
Yes.
Christian mystic, who
Yes.
I was very, very influenced by reading her. I thought her
Yes.
magnificent.
Yes. Well, I feel like I've learned, I was learning, because I certainly know Jane Goodall, but I didn't know Ms. Underhill, and I was highlighting that. And then there was a moment in one of the chapters where you talked about the mysticism, and you also spoke about what I appreciated very much was the unifying underlying beliefs of all religions, that there's. So when I think of mindfulness, it can't be separate from mysticism.
Oh, that's really lovely. I love that, because it's true. Do you know, really what got me interested in exploring or coupling, if you will, mindfulness and mysticism is because the deeper you go into present moment awareness, it's like a lens. It starts to widen your vantage point. And so you start to see much more of life. And it's not always just in the material sense. Obviously, there's much more to life than there's just the material perception. It's spiritual. So mysticism to me seemed like, oh, what a natural coupling of bringing present moment awareness into the areas that aren't always, maybe it's ineffable, it's hard to put into words, or it can feel invisible. You don't know really what it is, or people can experience it at places of worship. And I wanted to take it out of that context. I wanted to really take the whole notion of being present and being able to imbibe what can be described as mystical, divine, holy, sacred. Let anybody put whatever words holds meaning for them to that experience.
Yes.
But mysticism seemed like such a natural door to open and bring mindfulness into the conversation. Do you know? Because to me, I feel like they're very intertwined in many ways.
Too, because when you have those transcendent moments and you're tapping into that field that can't be measured necessarily,
Yes.
you're so in that moment.
Yes.
There's nothing else going on around for me when I'm in that space. And it's so elevating. And so I understand why you were feeling that euphoria, because you're literally, your vibration, your frequency is just elevated.
Yes. I mean, you know, probably when we are in such present moment awareness, when we are really in the present moment, we can experience all sorts of exquisite things, do you know?
Yes.
And we live life oftentimes removed from that, you know, which is so unnatural. One of my favorite quotes is Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's quote, which I'm sure you know, is "We are spiritual beings having a human experience." Do you know? And so I don't want us to be pulled down or bogged down so much by the, you know, human experiences of our lives, but to remember to really celebrate and acknowledge and revere the spiritual experiences. And we must make room for those experiences. We must allow for them, or else we don't invite them in. Do you know?
Yes. And to what you're saying, and to your book, it's courting that. We
Right.
are courting that divine experience. We
Exactly.
are courting it through being really present, being, you know, that keeping thine eye single, and really courting the divine, having those moments. And they can be, I can remember, and you ask questions in here, like I'm looking in this particular chapter, in chapter 6. I am asking if you want to live a life with greater meaning, and maybe that greater meaning can happen if you raise your awareness a little more, so that everything in your life can mean more to you than it does right now. Here are a few questions to ask yourself about your life presently. 1, what does your life mean to you? 2, does your life, I mean, I'm reading this to you as though, I mean, you wrote this.
I love it. I love
it. It was so moving. 2, does your life hold deep meaning for you? 3, if yes, what meaning does your life hold for you? 4, if no, what meaning would you like your life to hold for you? 5, what does divine mean to you? 6, what would living a divine life mean or look like to you? Do you want to live a divine life? 8, how can you begin to live a divine life? And then this line right after that, it is the sovereign right of every human being to live their life exactly as their soul desires to.
Thank you. You read that so beautifully. Yes, yes to all of that. Do you know? And those questions, Wendy, that we have the right to ask ourselves. Do you know, when you think of how many people don't even feel that they have a right to be happy, let alone live a life that holds sacred meaning to them? Do you know? And this is what I invite the reader to ask themselves, so that they can experience greater meaning and perhaps have these exquisite experiences on their life journey. Do you know?
Yes. And experience the mystical in what could be considered the mundane, in the everyday experience. I remember when my daughter was 2 and we were in Venice, and the sun was streaming and the street was really wide, and I could smell, the beach, I could smell the air, and it was just like this pristine, beautiful day. And I was just overflowing with this gratitude that I had the moment, I got the opportunity to be present with this little being that I believe chose me. I believe it's a sacred agreement between parent and child. And that to me was a mystical moment.
Right. Yes, you described that so well, because I don't want people to think that the mystical experience has to be just so unattainable and just full of bells and whistles, which it can be. It can be many different things. But I also talk about the sunset and the sunrise, looking into a lover's eyes, holding your baby. Do you know, there's so many ways in which we can access the mystical experience, that it can be something very simple that's right in front of us and we don't even see it, that we can invite ourselves into that experience.
Well, I know that you do that. I've been to your exquisite home, and it is just such a representation of who you be. Like, who you be is revealed in your home. And I'm curious, as as a writer, and as how long did it take you to write this book? Did the chapters show up before you wrote them, as can happen? Like, I'd love to hear your process about that.
I'm not so good with linear time. Like, when people ask me, like, how long did something take? I would say to completion, definitely like a full year, and then a second year thereabout, to get it all consolidated. I really felt the pull to write this book, and I really went into that realm. Like, I was excited to go into that world, because I knew that by taking that journey, I would experience all the things that I was curious about, and that I had the inquiry about. Do you know? So all of the things that I was very curious about, I wanted to go deeper towards that. I wanted to take a deep dive into those areas. And it was really just a wondrous journey for me. And
Mystical.
Yeah, it really was. And I felt that the chapters really revealed themselves to me. Do you know, like, this is a process that happens. And when you venture into those areas that feel very magical or mystical, mystery and magic happens. Do you know? It's part of the experience. So I really feel like I was not only ready to imbibe it, but I was able to meet it and how it wanted to show itself to me. So a word that I use a lot in the book is free fall. Do you know that when we free fall, oftentimes we have this need to feel so in control, and I understand that, do you know, but to really allow ourselves to be taken into the unknown and to have a sense of free falling into the unknown felt really very congruent to me. It felt very natural for me to just allow myself to trust this process and give myself over to it.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I had a sense when I was looking at the chapters, I had a sense that that was what occurred for you. It just felt, I could feel that. When I hear people speak or when I read something, I feel it. I feel into it. And so one of the chapters, I mean, each chapter, just everyone, I really encourage you to get this book. And I will make sure in the show notes that you know exactly where to go to buy this. It is such a beautiful book. And it is, I know I'm going to refer to it because I love how you have the quotes from master teachers right before the chapter. And then you close the chapter with this, I want to say it's like a spiritual growth work and inquiry that you can just take in. And so, you know, when I read it, and again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to reference it. One of the chapters that jumped out for me is self-surrender.
Yes, exactly. And that really, to me goes hand in hand with free falling.
Mm-hmm.
Because in order to really allow ourselves to go into these unknown experiences, we really have to surrender, do you know?
Right.
And that to me was, there's so much to come to know about ourselves on the journey of self-realization, but one has to be willing to surrender. Again, use the words allow, invite, free fall, join, just allow yourself to go towards that. And I think the greatest gifts are known to us when we're willing to do that surrendering.
Yes. Yes. And what a wonderful world it would be if the population, the global population, especially at this time in history, were willing to surrender everything they think they know for a
Yeah.
new experience.
Yeah, I know. I think that we're at such a incredible spiritual transformative time right now. As you know, I've talked about this, and we really need to be willing to let some of the old paradigms and the old controlling thinking patterns go, relinquish those thinking and thoughts that no longer serves us, and to allow for a new way of thinking to come forward, and again to surrender to that, to trust it. Do you know?
Yes. Well, what you provide in this book is the opportunity for people to engage their critical thinking, but also relax and let go of the control. With
Yes.
each chapter, you
Yes.
provide that opportunity to people. And it would be so wonderful if people would heed that and allow themselves the opportunity to have a new thought.
It really is about that, because I think that the whole notion of transformational thinking, what I love to talk about that, and I really go into that with all my books.
Mm-hmm.
Says Who, my first book was a cognitive method that I created for transforming negative and fear-based thoughts. And the whole idea of knowing that you could change one thought out for something, for its positive counterpart. When I teach this to people, it's sometimes very hard for them to wrap their mind around, like, wow, I can actually change that thought. The whole idea of changing our thoughts, which I always say, we're the curators of our thoughts.
Yes.
We're the ones that are really able to pick and choose the thoughts that we want to hold in our mind's eye. I use the whole idea of curating because I think when you go to a museum, they curate the finest art of the artist that is in that space. and we walk in and we're able to see this greatness, and I say our minds are the greatest real estate. What do we want? What thoughts do we want to put in our mind's eye? We have a choice. And I say some of our thoughts are very useful to us, and some of our thoughts are useless. They serve no purpose whatsoever for our well-being, mind, body, and spirit. So this whole idea of being able to change our thoughts, it's like, I sometimes think it's too simple for people to accept. I'm like, oh, that can't be, it just can't be that easy. And when I do this exercise that I've done many times in workshops, it's called the release and replace technique. And I have people write down on a Post-it that I provide for them to write down a negative thought. And they're like, oh, can I write down more than one? And I say, well, let's start with one, and so they write down a negative thought, and I tell them to take that piece of paper and crumple it up. And they're like crumpling up that piece of paper. And I say, now throw it across the room. And I've been standing in the front of the room where all these balls of paper come, over my head, and, and I say, throw it like you really mean it. And they throw that piece of paper that's in a ball, a scrunched ball, across the room. And I say, okay, do you want to pick up that piece of paper and unfold it and take back that negative thought or fear-based thought? And they're like, no. And I say, okay, now I want you to write down a positive counterpart thought to what you wrote down. And they're like, you could just see their whole face changes, and they're writing down this, they're taking great joy in writing that down. I say, okay, do you want to crumple that up in a ball and throw it? And they're like, no, I don't. And I said, yeah, maybe take that piece of paper, that Post-it, and put it on your mirror, on your refrigerator. So when you have something experiential, rather than, I try to make my work experiential for the reader, because I just don't like to talk this stuff to people and then they don't experience it themselves.
Yes.
As you know, when you have that actual experience, you can have that aha moment, that gestalt, like, wow, that felt really good. And no, I don't want to keep that thought in my head. I do want to let it go. So sometimes that really gives people a better understanding of how easy it can be to change our thoughts if we desire to. You have to have a desire.
Yes. I think of the root meaning of desire, and how important a word desire is, and also the idea of receiving, and what a powerful exercise that you have people do. I mean, that, because it engages the whole brain, and their writing, and then the motor skills. I mean, that's really powerful, Ora. That's really.
Yeah, and I love watching it, because it really shows me how much people really want that experience. They just, Wendy, we just got to give ourselves the permission to have it, and try something new.
Yes.
And try to get out of what we think is our comfort zone. But is it really comfortable to be in that zone that we call our comfort zone? What's so comfortable about it? Just being in control, or being attached to the familiar, but not being willing to try something new that could be a great breakthrough for us.
Very true. It reminds me of, in the introduction, you spoke about the chemicals in the brain. And I think about the operation of the three major parts of the brain: the reptilian, the limbic, and the prefrontal cortex. And what you're speaking to is that removal of that old fear-based life is hard, or the victim thinking, and then replacing it, like really bringing something in, and to be able to access it, to release the oxytocin or the dopamine, or to really get that going. And a lot of my work for the past 20 plus years has been with parents, and really understanding brain chemistry, brain science, and ways to talk to kids. And you spoke to the good job, and I really tell my parents to let that go in their vocabulary, and replace it with a description of what they're noticing. However, I think that if we had schools to inspire children and to draw forth their innate brilliance and intelligence through social and emotional development and the recognition of the brain, the chemicals in the brain, and the parts of the brain, we wouldn't be experiencing what we're experiencing right now.
Yes, I agree. I do think that even in the area of mindfulness, I mean, I was teaching mindfulness at schools, and when I think that things like just teaching children mindfulness, how to be present with acceptance and self-love, just something like that, like things to teach children early on, starting as early as kindergarten, mindfulness, meditation, sitting quietly. I mean, I remember in kindergarten where we would lay on these mats. Remember those mats? You would fold.
Yes.
They would like fold it into like 3 parts.
Yes.
Nobody called it anything. It was just rest time.
Right.
And the teacher would turn off the lights. And I remember really loving it as a child. Imagine what they could have described it as, or what they could have told us during that time, like why it's important to be in quiet time, why it's important to just be with ourselves, and it's okay to be with our thoughts, and to really teach that to children in a fundamental way so that they really embrace self-acceptance and that they're comfortable not being in a overly chaotic, distracting oriented world that the kids are in today. That they don't know how to really be in quietude because they're not taught that. It has to be learned. We go back as adults to learn these skill sets like meditation and mindfulness and contemplation and the contemplative practices that should be taught as early as, elementary school. So valuable.
It is, and it's remarkable to me because you spoke about the opiate epidemic in the book, and you referred to addiction in the book, at least what I was reading. And so when I think of our children, our little children, and I think about what you're saying, the wisdom of what you're saying, instead of having them on these devices so that parents are free to do other things, having them walk in nature or build a garden or rest by the water, or I'm not as well versed in Waldorf as some might be, but what I have appreciated is the rhythms, is honoring the rhythms, because when I think of your book, Mindfulness and Mysticism, I think about the rhythm. You take these moments, you're bringing presence, your focus to the present. There's a rhythm, there's a vibration, a feeling tone to that allows you to enter into the mystic.
Exactly. And I think that is something, again, that is so valuable to teach our children. I mean, when you talk about the Waldorf schools, which I believe are based on the teachings and philosophy of Rudolf Steiner,
Yes.
who I'm a big fan of his writings that are so relevant to today. He talks a lot about children and their spirits, and we must really pay close attention to what his intention was around that. The children of the light and the spirit of their light, and it must not be taken from them and robbed from them, and we're up against that right now, as and that these teachings are sacred. It doesn't have to be something that's so out there. Let's bring it close to home. Let's bring it into our schools. Let's bring it into our lives. Let's bring it into our relationships. That's really why I want to demystify this notion of something that seems so unattainable, and only mystics can experience that, and only people that are into esoterica and metaphysics. No. It's also not just about going to church, temple, or a mosque once a year or a couple times a year and feeling something that feels very sacred to you. But then what about all the other days of the year?
Yes. How to find the mystical in every day.
Exactly.
How to, because I know in my teaching, it's, you find what you're looking for. When you set an intention,
Right.
to see something or to experience something, you will experience that, because it's like your mind is like a laser. It roots out. So imagine what you're talking about. It's so beautiful. I want to read your other books too. And I resonate. I know we're talking about mindfulness and mysticism, and I just want to say this: Live True. Oh my gosh. Mindfulness Guide to Authenticity. That I will read your other book as well.
Thank
But
you.
I really appreciate that whole concept of living true, because I feel that we are in a world where people are not living true to their real, authentic essence.
Yes, yes, and we're being told and shown and dictated to how we should live so inauthentically, and we're being blitzkrieged, we're being inundated, we're being overstimulated. And again, we have to think about children, their young psyches and how impressionable they are.
Yes.
Especially now, we need to really protect them from that. And even as adults, we're the effect of it. And you talk about our devices. Yes, look at the stimulation. Talk about, I do go into the opioid crisis, and I go into the brilliance of the brain and neuroscience and the chemicals of the brain, that we rely way too heavily on the external to ignite us. And I don't mean the external like nature, which is the most beautiful thing around us to derive our endorphin rush from, is nature.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot to really look at today, because the world is really in a major transition right now, as you know, and there's so much going on that if we don't pay attention to strengthening our awareness, developing our consciousness, raising our awareness, raising our consciousness, we're going to be completely at the effect of this technology that's going to rob us of the very beauty of nature. I'm very concerned about something like the metaverse. It's really spooky to me about this whole idea of trying to pull people into an alternate universe. What's wrong with this one?
Right.
What's wrong with looking outside and seeing the beautiful blue sky and the clouds? Do we need to recreate a new universe other than the one that we have? Maybe we could make this universe better by being more present, aware, awake human beings, and become more conscious, that we don't feel we have to do some alternate virtual reality to replace it.
Yeah.
Just
imagine
my take on it,
Excuse me. So sorry.
Yeah, I think we need to be very mindful of a lot of the changes that are being presented to us right now that are not in our best interest.
I completely agree with you. I saw yesterday, you probably saw it as well, that there was a case that was brought before the FCC about 5G, and it was lost. And so there's going to be all of these 5G satellites put into the ground, put into the sky. And I know that technology, there's some great things about technology. And then there's the other side of it, like metaverse and the radiation. And these are real in this dimension. And at the same time, I think about the power of what you're talking about in your book, Mindfulness and Mysticism, that to navigate this world and to really receive the innovation and the direction that will really support your health, the revelation of wholeness through your body, critical thinking, joy, mindfulness, to practice what you offer in your book, so that people can have access to that when they're thinking about, well, what do I do with my children? If they can come along and just install 5G in my house, in my neighbor's house, in the apartment building, anywhere I am, and And so without mindfulness, without the access to the mystical, it's just walking lockstep.
It is. And again, there it goes back to the mindful awareness of what is happening right before our eyes. If we're not really seeing, and that is the art of seeing, again, there's another quote that I love by Thoreau. It's
Yes.
not what you're looking at that matters, it's what you're seeing.
Yes.
We have to look around and go, oh, look at all these 5G towers that are being erected all over our city. When I moved to my neighborhood, there was a consensus and a vote that the neighbors didn't want to have a cell tower close by. Well, what happened to decisions made by, committee or homeowners, or the way the people feel? What about the way we feel about things? If we don't strike the balance one day, and I'm a perennial optimist, but if we don't really begin to look at these things, we're going to wake up one day and be horrified by what we're witnessing and seeing as a reality and go, well, how did this happen?
Yes.
And it was happening right under our noses, and we chose to look away.
Yes, agree.
Do you know? I mean, what more do we need to see? What more do we need to know? And, I do mention in Mindfulness Mysticism, I think I cover a lot of territory in that book. And I even go into, how technology is advancing exponentially. Look, I get it. We're in the future. We're in the 21st century. I get it. And I want to say to all those technology creators, that want to take us really into the future really fast, it's like, hold on, because if you are not a conscious human being, if you're not aware of the power that we're putting out into the universe, we're incredibly powerful creatures. We create all sorts of powerful things that could be our undoing if we're not careful.
Yes.
We're masters at creating this technology, and we create all sorts of, as I said, very powerful things. But without a conscious awareness of what we're putting out into the universe, it could be our destruction. Do you know?
Yes.
That's really all I'm asking is, to all those people that really want to do it faster, mightier, greater, bigger, more powerful. They've got this insatiable appetite to make things just like, going into something like a metaverse. If you're not asking yourselves fundamental questions, that again goes back to the Pierre Teilhard de Chardin quote, we are spiritual beings and we are having these human experiences. Are we going to give into these human experiences that are going to take us so far out there that we're going to lose sight of our spiritual being, of our spirits? That concerns me, especially now more than ever. That's why becoming a more awake, and I don't mean woke, all this woke talk, which, I wrote the word woke in my book before it became sort of politically manipulative in its usage. I mean awake, and the true meaning of awakeness, to be really an awake, conscious human being. Each and every one of us, it's incumbent upon all of us to wake up.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. Yes. And the reason that what you're saying is so crucial is that without a shift in consciousness, without elevated consciousness, it is really like changing the chairs on the Titanic.
Exactly. You got it.
And so, form that follows consciousness.
Right.
So read Ora's book, get Mindfulness and Mysticism, and really allow yourself to receive the beauty and the wisdom of her words and her teaching. It's very powerful, Ora. Really, very, very powerful. Each chapter has such wonderful wisdom and nuggets of truth teaching for people. And when I hear you talk about the experiential, it's very meaningful. And Carlene's talking about Charles Eisenstein. Yes, Charles is wonderful. And what I appreciate about Ora, is that it's wonderful to have the feminine, because in our world, we have a lot of the patriarchal and a lot of brilliant male master teachers, and it's wonderful to have the feminine, that feminine influence.
I agree, and I really, when I hear you say that, I think of the feminine in the most, just in a way that is so pure, not in this sort of like, let's give it a label, feminine as in a feministic context. I don't see it in that way. I see feminine as the feminine, the yin and the yang.
Yes.
Do you know, the feminine is the anima, the animus, as Carl Jung said.
Yes.
Feminine energies are very needed right now, for sure. Do you know? And it's not that I believe I am or you are, Wendy, knowing you, we're not anti, the male, the animus input into the evolution of life or the tapestry of life. But I believe that the feminine energies and the feminine, the nurturing, the healing, the very things that come very natural for us as women, as healers and lovers and nurturers and sages, and mothers, sisters, lovers, whatever you want to call us. This is what we bring forward. These are the energies that we bring forward as midwives. I use the term midwife in the book. It's like we need to midwife ourselves and others at every turn. It is a birthing, whether it's a physical birth or it's a spiritual birth. We're in the midst of a big birthing right now, as you know.
Yes. Yes. So yes, I agree about midwifing and the birthing and the shift, and I believe we are the sacred midwives of a new world. And
we are, and I want to just add to that, Wendy, quickly, is that it doesn't matter whether you've given physical birth or not. Each of us can contribute to the birthing process. And I'm using that really in a spiritual context.
Yes.
Everybody can be a part of that. Do you know? Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. Spiritual mothering is so essential right now. It's crucial.
Yes.
And to recognize that if you're in a female body, you will have the masculine energies, as you've spoken to. It's not about the form, but it's the energy. And we really need the feminine, as you said, we need that vibration, we need that energy, we need that consciousness to balance, because I know there are times and have been times in my life where I was operating from the masculine, but it doesn't serve me and it doesn't serve my family. I mean, it can serve in certain places, but ultimately, if we are about the business of mindfulness and mysticism, if we are about the business of birthing a new world where peace and love and compassion and kindness and generosity and freedom of choice are the pillars.
Yes.
We can't keep
and it's what's most natural. We need to remember what is most true and most authentic, going back to those words, to really stay true to what is most real and most authentic. Do you know, when we start to move away from the natural order of things, start to manipulate that which is the most pure, which is the most sacred, and we start to move away from that, and we need to return back to what is most whole, most holy, most sacred. Oh,
I want to talk to you for so many hours. I just want, I love what you're sharing. I love your wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing and for being such a powerful example of what the feminine mystic looks like. We are urban shamans. We are, urban mystics, and you are holding that so magnificently.
Well, I'm blessed to share it with people like yourself and other people and other women, and not just women, whoever wants to share within this circle of wisdom. Aren't we inviting everybody in right now? Isn't this a really beautiful overture, a beautiful invitation right now on the planet? Really look and see what invitations are coming forward from the universe. Are they overtures to be able to join together out of love? Freedom, the word that you use, Wendy, a very important word right now. Freedom. These are our sovereign rights, do you know? And what I'm seeing is a circle that's permeating throughout the globe right now. And that we are waking up to the fact that this circle of light and love is what ultimately will connect us. Do you know?
Yes. And what is so powerful about what you're saying is the reminder of, we don't have to have 100%. It can be 51% that are holding that field that you're talking about.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly right.
We come together and we hold that field globally.
Yes. Yes.
And everything shifts.
Yes. And it reverberates out. That's a very powerful energy that isn't just determined by percentages. It's determined by our own light. And that light really permeates out wide and far. Do you know?
Yes.
So you see, we see this really far reaching. Every day I wake up and I see that this is reverberating out farther and wider out into the universe. It's a very exciting time. It really is.
A very exciting time. And you can only repress and oppress people for so long.
Exactly. You got that right. For sure. I think people are waking up more today than ever before. And for those of us that understand that, we're inviting others to join us in that awakening.
Join our conscious caravan.
Completely. Get on board.
Be a conscious creator of this new world. Be a participant, not a bystander. Really, be engaged and practice.
Yeah. And I know, Wendy, that we're nearing towards, our end, but of the conversation, which I can go on talking to you forever as well, is that it really is this invitation to not live in fear.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of fear going on right now. And I think everybody needs to ask themselves, what are they afraid of? What is dominating their intentions and their purpose right now? Is it led by fear, or is it led by the light and led by love? And I've learned a lot in the last 2 years, as I'm sure many of us have, and I've been really quite amazed at how much fear people have allowed themselves to be taken over by. And you want to really go back to the essence of the mystical experience. We know that that's not real. That's just an illusion. It's not real. What's real is light and love and truth and freedom and the beauty that each and every one of us has a right to experience in this lifetime.
Two things about that is that there's no possessiveness. When you're living in your essence, no one is forcing you. There is such an expansive invitation and embracing, and fear is contagious. So and I believe, I've thought about this for a long time, and I know we've talked about this before, but I believe that people are afraid of dying, of death. There's just been this complete blanketing of a 24/7 ticker tape of, if you don't do this, you're going to die. If you don't do this, your kids are going to die. And it's been like this mass hypnosis that has just taken over any sense of critical thinking, because they're not practicing mindfulness.
Absolutely. And I really love what, Bobby Kennedy Jr. says. We're all connected to Children's Health Defense, amazing work that they're doing, we're all doing.
Yes.
And that is, I think Bobby's quote, the essence of it was, you have to love freedom more than you fear death. You know, and this is really the time to declare that.
Yes. And what is, I mean, in spiritual practice, we are constantly dying to our former selves, and that former self includes the limiting thoughts that we believe we practice, like you do that powerful exercise of those thoughts and throwing them out. You can pick them up if you want. They're yours if you want to take them back. But who wants to pick up that stuff? You know, and so, right?
It's a choice.
Yes.
It's a choice. You know, we have choices.
Yes.
You know, imagine that we have choices every day. And, you know, as we have our freedoms being, you know, manipulated, we have to remember that we have choices and we have rights.
Yes.
And we mustn't lose sight of those choices and those rights that are our sovereign choices and our sovereign rights.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. That is so, just so true. I mean, I think of remember when interracial marriages were illegal, and people talked about the government coming into your bedroom and telling you who you could have sex with, and then it expanded and it went into gay marriage, and then here we are, fast forward 2022, where the government is attempting to co-parent. We don't co-parent with the government. They do not come into our homes. And if you're a mom that's watching, this, or a dad that is listening to this, you're welcome, Carlene. And it behooves you to stand in your sovereign power as a parent, to reclaim your power, and think about the actions that you choose now will ripple out into your children and your children's children, the 7th generation principle.
Yes.
And so if we're going to talk about the real application of mindfulness and mysticism in daily life, you are a sovereign being. You are here on purpose with purpose. You have brains in your feet and shoes on your head, as Seuss, but you have dominion over your thoughts.
Yes.
The only mammal that has dominion over your thoughts is you.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So true.
So please go and buy, support Ora Nadrich and buy her new book. I know I've said this a number of times, but I really honestly believe that you will receive so much from her book. And again, I'll make sure you know how to connect with her. And I saw that, are you doing something, Live True? Do you have a program coming up with Live True, or is that?
I have my book Live True also has a journal, the Live True journal, and I did do a Zoom workshop with that. So I might do that again. I'm not doing it right now because I'm focused on mindfulness and mysticism right now. So I'm going to be doing some things around that and some workshops and some exciting things. I will be having a book signing at Diesel Books on March 20th here in Brentwood, Los Angeles, and I'm going to be doing a mindfulness group at Soho House Malibu. The space is really limited, so they allow for some non-members and then some members. So for anybody that's interested, they can, whether it's through you, Wendy, or message me, and I'll be doing them monthly. So there's that. And but I hope to do something again with Live True, which is, about the authentic self. And I'll let you know since we're in contact if that comes up again.
Yes. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing, and for the generosity of heart and spirit that you hold, this vibration, and for just being such a beautiful teacher. And I'm so appreciative of you. And I'm so grateful that our paths have crossed. And I am so, I really love this book.
Thank you, Wendy. And thank you so much for holding this sacred space that you do on your podcast and the work that you're doing, and that we were able to, find each other and expand our circles even wider and farther. So that's always such a gift.
Yes.
And thank you for having me on your podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sure we will be talking soon again. And for everyone who is present with us and who will be listening to this, you are in for such a treat. Allow yourself to receive. That is a really feminine quality, but allow yourself to receive. Receive good. Joy is your birthright. Good is good. Good is good to receive. And as I say, know that you are powerful beyond measure, loved beyond description, and a force for good in the world. So go forth and spread your magic. And then we will see you next week. And peace and many blessings. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, Ora.
Thank you, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.